Welcome to the 14th edition of the Annual Global Volatility Summit. We are thrilled to have an incredibly dynamic day ahead of us. The purpose of the summit is to encourage each of you to reconsider your perspectives on volatility, hedging strategies, options trading, and the intricate world of volatility dynamics. Anticipation fills the air as we eagerly await insights from our distinguished panelists and our esteemed featured guests.
The goal of this was to try and educate investors about how to think about volatility, derivative strategies, etc. And it's really morphed into something a lot bigger than that. And ultimately, the goal is by the end of today, hopefully you walk away from here really having a better understanding of the types of strategies that are available within our universe. So I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about kind of a quick review of where we've come from. And then I'm going to talk about a forward-looking view and to be able to just give some perspective of where I think opportunity set lies, and also just potentially some of the catalysts that are on my radar.
Well, today's panel is to really discuss the current volatility in the markets and across asset classes and regions, and also to hear from the panelists about their expectations looking forward.
If you look at, for instance, year-to-date average of the VIX, it's around 16, and realized vol is 3 points lower, and it's these same figures for V stocks is 17 and 14. So these are very, very comparable measures.
There has been a divergence between different tails, though, in the sense that short tails still have very elevated volatility. Longer tails have more depressed volatility. And you've seen that as well when you have large moves in yields. It's over the past year, it's been mostly led by the front end of the yield curve.
Yeah, I think what's interesting when you start to, what happened in the past 12 months? If I round up a bit, you end up at the end of September 2022 as your starting point. Basically, indeed, as Pierre said, it's been not that much volatility, mostly all the way up. If you look at it, Euro stocks, Nikkei, S&P, all up about 30% since then. Nasdaq up 40%.
Before we decide how to set a successful hedging strategy, maybe we need to define what the objective of a hedging strategy is, and how do you measure a successful hedge?
What's objective? The objective is not a hedging strategy, is not an insurance purchasing business. You're trying to have a hedging strategy to enhance your portfolio, to enhance the returns, to make sure that you have higher risk-adjusted returns, and to get a payout when there is an event, a systematic event, that allows you to reposition the portfolio and to basically provide for your needs without having to sell.
We at Capstone have basically two types of carry mitigation strategies. The first one is essentially that we have an implicit carry mitigation by selecting a group of strategies that we hope outperforms the simple put option strategy for a given unit of stress gain. And we seek that basically in the forward equity volatility space. We seek it basically in the put option replication space, where we ultimately try to over and underweight certain Greeks that we feel are more attractive at any given point in time.
And in addition, I make the argument that there's really lots of value to diversification, specifically in hedging strategies, relative to other types of investment strategies.
Today, I would probably agree that maybe equities are perhaps on the higher end and volatility is definitely on the lower end, but there are times when it's the other way around.
Ariane, for that warm introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm very excited to be hosting this panel and look forward to hearing from our panelists on their views and outlooks going into the end of the year. And what a year has been. When we started 2023, we started with fears of a recession in the US and hopes of a boom in China. And here we are 9 months later, and it's looking increasingly like the US economy might be growing faster than China's for the first time in a generation. Whoever said that predictions were hard, especially about the future, probably still would have been surprised by how this year turned out. So the question obviously now is, where do we go from here?
Our chief economist, Jan Hatzius, had done some work on when does the interest rate increases affect the economy? When does it affect the decisions that people make? And his finding was it happens far faster than most people realize.
Mortgages went from 3 to 8%. So first reaction of people is, okay, let me not move. I'm not going to buy home. I'm not going to sell home. But nobody's selling, so it doesn't impact the price, right? But eventually, a little by little, this refinancing cycle has to come for commercial real estate, for residential real estate, even for governments. So again, over 15 years of zero rates, these rates were locked in for, so small percentage of people need to actually refinance, but eventually everybody needs to refinance. So that's why these lags, I think there's a reason why they're going to be longer.
If you look at S&P 500 stocks, roll up all the stocks short interest, is actually now at an all-time low since we tracked the data in 2013, which means that investors try to short the market again and again and again, and because they get burned, at some point they gave up. And this is the point that they gave up.
That movement that we've seen in the past kind of month or so with the bear steepening continues with real rate increases, that could be very damaging for risk assets.
Great. So let me bring that.
Okay, so the polling questions are about, are you currently using risk mitigation strategies? The second one is, which strategies do you include in your defensive portfolio? And you should be able to select more than one answer for that one. And then what is your use case, which is something we're going to touch on certainly through the discussion. Why do you have this bucket if you have it? So it'll be very interesting to see the consensus view from the audience. And we'll come to that in a bit. So to get us started, Victoria, what is RMS and how does it work?
So sizing, in our, again, depending kind of on the implementation, sort of the alpha with enough convexity, that's kind of always there, right? And we probably have, I don't know, 20 to 30%, maybe even more, sort of in our commingled funds in those types of strategies. To buy outright protection, I guess it's a decision, about how much premium you want to spend and what sort of payoff you expect.
Today, because of many of the factors that were on the panel before us, we're taking the opportunity to be heavier in those first responders, so long volatility, and saying, listen, I'm not going to worry about that middle piece, that second responder. I'll still have a piece to it, of course, but I'm not going to just, blindly implement back to a 1 over neutral if I can, if opportunities are presenting themselves.
But the thought process is that it's definitely not going to create a positive return if we get a dislocation, but we want to have that liquidity enough to rebalance the portfolio into the more attractive opportunities. And so it's really that rebalancing mechanism, that liquidity that it provides, we think is important. We haven't gotten to the point where we've had that sizing discussion at the big portfolio level, but given the liquidity needs or the way portfolios are structured that I mentioned earlier, we think 5% is probably a good starting point, and then just allowing that to oscillate. So to the extent that it works, that gets up to 7, 8%, that sort of triggers an automatic rebalancing. We think that that's the right way to approach it. We haven't seen a lot of implementation in that area, though.
The strategies or the buckets that are relevant for us here are tail and convexity. Tail is premium paid, pure, kind of low basis risk, highly convex stuff. Negative expected value is an isolated line item, but as I mentioned, the value is in the redeployment of that P&L.
Today we're going to talk about trend following, and shortly I'll let the gentlemen here introduce themselves, but we're going to be talking about the drawdown this year in March, as probably you all are aware of, and seems a little bit like ancient history, but I think we should go through that. We'll talk about trend following's defensiveness over time and the outlook on that. Talk about alternative markets and maybe a little bit of AI. Wouldn't be a panel in 2023 without that topic, but
and indeed, a lot of the kind of behavioral explanation for trend following is around the tendency investors have to cut winners too early, to hold on to losers too long. So if we started trying to sort of lock in profit, we'd be playing into exactly those biases that trend following is trying to exploit. So in some ways, the simple answer is no, you just have to live with it. But I think people have learned lessons, not just from 2018, but further back to the taper tantrum in 2013.
Earlier, we saw someone on stage that compared investing with football, and he said you should not take the defenders of the field. Yes, but also you should want the defenders to be just as fast as the offenders they have to stop. If we, in a volatile environment, when many of our investors have huge losses in other things, you need something to compensate that is high volatile as well. And if we would respond by that, by bringing down volatility, because we won't have some high Sharpe ratio or something that is completely irrelevant, then it doesn't really work. So to give compensation, we have to embrace volatility and use volatility to get volatile returns the moment it's needed the most?
Common components, so equity beta or duration. So if you have a lot of those markets and sort of you don't scale it properly and you get like into a bull market, like for every fixed income market as a whole, then you start to accumulate one directional risk in that trend. And then clearly when you're complete and you have 100% of your exposure, then it's likely to turn around. So I think for that reason, it's not wise to allocate too much to that component, and it's especially important to allocate to different components in the portfolio based on tail behavior.
So what we found is, if you build the right model, you cannot trend follow it, you cannot time it, and if you can time it, it's because you don't have the best model. So improve your model, don't time trend following.
If you ever want to feel a little self-conscious about your career achievements, just come sit next to Guy for 60 minutes, one of the most influential and creative people in the world. Guy, thank you for doing this.
Cirque du Soleil is not a story of one person. You know, you cannot achieve such a thing as an individual. It's always about creating a team that is dedicated to achieve the same dream and is driven by excellence, precision, and pride. And we did all that. And like I said, right time at the right place. Obviously, that was a factor, but also taking amazing risk, great risk, live or die risk in business, and succeed, overcoming them. But the rest was also connected to the dream of traveling. And through all the show I did, having the pleasure of integrating my show, or all the show, that a little bit of being, I would say, the promoter of this amazing, beautiful mosaic, cultural mosaic around the world. So in our show, the influence was, the music was ethnic, the costumes. Sometimes we were inspiring by the world global community and type of community or country. And Cirque became an amazing tool for me to promote the beautiful world we're living in, touching the hearts of people. You know, it's like when you do a show with the expectation and the goal to touch millions of people, you have to overcome your ego, your pretension of being a great creator. You're doing shows for millions of people. So what is important in it is, like, in every show we're doing, I was telling to my creators, listen, we need, as much as possible, to make feel that each individual account, woman, gay, workers, children, grandpa, grandma, to feel that there's one moment in the show they feel it's being done to them personally. Once you have that, they will open their eyes to the rest of the show. They will live an amazing experience, but they will feel that, pay attention to what they are. And once that happens, they give themselves to you.
Super excited for the next hour in terms of the insights and stories, and learn more about his mission. To provide a little bit about a detail and an intro from Tim, I think it's really important as we set the stage for him to come up and provide a lot of actionable thoughts in terms of what he's been able to accomplish in his career. Tim Peake, the trailblazing figure who made history as the first British ESA astronaut to venture to the International Space Station. His transformative work during the Principia mission resonated deeply, captivating the hearts and thoughts of millions. Beyond his astronautical feats, Tim is celebrated as a best-selling author and compelling advocate for communicating scientific knowledge across all age groups. Tim's journey embarked with service as an Army officer stationed in Northern Ireland, a chapter that culminated with the acquisition of his Army Flying Wings in 1994. Taking to the skies across Kenya, Cyprus, Canada, and his homeland, he subsequently overtook the role of combat search and rescue instructor. His aerial endeavors extended operations enforcing peace and offering vital humanitarian aid in the aftermath of the Bosnian War. A significant phase in Tim's trajectory involved training the pioneering UK Apache attack helicopter crews. His expertise flourished, leading to a promotion of major and the accumulation of over 2,000 hours of flying experience. Impressive. Evolving into a test pilot, he contributed extensively, including deployment of Afghanistan in support of the Special Forces operations. Tim's association with the European Space Agency, ESA, materialized in 2009 when he was selected as an astronaut. Rigorous training led him to his assignment for the mission in the International Space Station, eventually launching in December of 2015 after months of extensive preparation. The Principia mission, a hallmark of Tim's career, encompassed remarkable feats such as a spacewalk to mend the station's power supply, skillfully docking 2 spacecrafts, and remotely driving a rover across simulated Martian terrain from space. Tim, I'm looking forward to really hearing more about that. His commitment to advancing knowledge was evidenced by participating in over 250 scientific experiments. Moreover, Tim's passion for education shone as he engaged more than 2 million school children across Europe in over 30 projects during his time in space. As an ambassador for STEM, Tim Peake strives to ignite inspiration in the future generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of exploration and education alike.
In space, we like to have contingency plans for absolutely everything, plenty of backup options. And this is where we embrace technology, using high-fidelity virtual reality systems. And I mentioned about those soft skills that the space agencies focus on during selection. Of course, being up there in a confined environment with an international crew, space is not the place to have a clash of personalities. But you've got to be able to train and develop those soft skills. And we found out that one of the best environments for doing that is actually down in a cave. Because in a cave, you can put people under physical and psychological stress. I learned very early on in my days in the army that if you want to understand someone's true personality and character, all you need to do is just make them cold, wet, tired, and hungry. Their true personality comes shining out. You can do that really easily in a cave. You can take away people's watches, deprive them of any sense of time, send them to sleep, wake them up 2 hours later, tell them they've had a good 7 hours rest. But you always come out of this training stronger. You learn a lot about yourself, about how you deal with stress and pressure and fatigue and hunger, but perhaps more importantly, you learn a lot about your other colleagues and crewmates, about how they deal with things and how you can help each other when you see you might be struggling. And it's also really important for us to embrace risk as well. Training in caves, training underwater, they're not risk-free environments. But it'd be pointless for us to train in a risk-free environment and then to be asked to sit on a rocket, fly to space, and do a spacewalk.